So you know the routine. I'm going to turn it over to Bo. He's going to give you all his introductions, and we'll get the show on the road.
Thank you, Dr. Seltzer. Once again, audio sounds good to everybody? All right. So I have to say, standing in front of this room full of people is amazing. It wasn't that long ago, I'm pretty sure it was in room 155, where it was post-COVID and there were like 10 people sitting in the first couple of tables. And there were a handful of people, maybe, a pretty good quantity, but everybody else was virtual. And for starters, I think it shows a lot about y'all's dedication and your belief in what the program and the presenters can bring you value-wise. Networking is such a huge component of building y'all's success in the future. But I quite frankly can't tell you enough how odd it is to talk to 10 people and do a big presentation like this. So it's very warming to have the participation, and all y'all being here means so much. So to y'all's benefit, Dr. Salser did provide me with some feedback for the last one that we did back in the fall. And so I kind of used that to guide and mold some of the information I'm going to share with you today. So one of the first things that was feedback on that was I got feedback that y'all wanted to hear more about the personal story of myself with Fastenal. And since I haven't done a true introduction yet, my name is Bo Harris, and I represent Fastenal's national account team here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And as I was asked to, I'm going to tell you a little bit more and provide some color about the journey with Fastenal, and maybe drop some nuggets of advice on things that I've maybe learned the hard way over the last few years. But this is essentially my story with the last 19 years with the company. I was very similar to this, recruited out of a classroom where I was in my second to last or penultimate, if you will, semester. And a Fastenal representative and district manager came in and talked to one of our classrooms. And then they came in and talked to our next classroom too. It's just I got lucky and kind of got a double dose. But the second time it actually sunk in, and I heard about a company that seemed like it fit with me value-wise. And while I had no intention on being here for 19 years, I did feel like it was a good opportunity for me to get a foothold in a job, because at that point I was getting a history degree, and the one thing I knew for sure is I didn't want to teach history. So I went to work for Fastenal part-time as I finished my last semester of school, and as my little AI picture there indicates, I was taping boxes of bolts shut in like a 90-degree warehouse for 25 hours a week, helping support Stewart Systems, which is a competitor of like Kone Elevator. They make escalators and elevator equipment. So it was real glamorous to start. But the reason I joined the company is it sounded like an opportunity to go full-time when I graduated. And like maybe some of y'all, I didn't necessarily know what I was going to do when I graduated. So it was about January when I accepted my offer to come on part-time. And that kind of gave me some assurance that if things worked out, maybe I would have a full-time opportunity when I graduated. And that's exactly what happened. My district manager got with me just as I was finishing up my finals in that spring semester and said, "Hey, we've got a full-time sales role in our Plano store coming open. Would you help us fill it?" And I was like, "I drive 45 minutes one way to Plano, but that's fine. I'll totally take you up on it." And so my Fastenal full-time career started. Funny thing is that the last day before I went full-time, I actually ran over a motorcycler. I don't think I've ever shared this story with you before. Very first time I ever drove a Fastenal company vehicle, by the way. But I pulled across East Plano Parkway, and those of you that are familiar with Plano, there's like 3 lanes of traffic going both ways. Well, I was going to shoot out across and then turn left. So I was sitting right in the middle, and a motorcyclist came by and hit right into the rear of my truck. And the freaked out 21-year-old that I am, I proceeded to run over his shoulder right after that because I didn't know what else to do. He was fine. He was fine. But I had my Fastenal driver's license revoked. We have a thing where, we try to be a safe company. We're supporting a lot of other companies that, they want to make sure they're not introducing liability to their business. So I was actually a salesperson with Fastenal, an outside salesperson, mind you, for the first 6 months without the ability to drive a Fastenal vehicle. So I'm very lucky I didn't get fired, but I didn't. And good thing, because about 18 months into that sales role, it was back when Fastenal was opening up a lot of new locations. And we might touch just briefly on some of that today, but just to give you some context, we were opening up like 2 stores a week in the 2007, 2008 timeframe. It's in the state of Texas, we were going gangbusters. It was a relatively new market for us. And the way that we were growing at that time was just getting closer and closer to our customers with our branches. So I got lucky. They opened a store in Gainesville, Texas, and I took that over the very tail end of 2008. Did that job for 4 years. I kind of timed it out really well because there was like a big, I'd say, spike or ramp up in the oil field industry, especially with equipment and fracking at that time. And working in Gainesville, there was a lot of manufacturing wrapped around oil and gas. So that Spindletop and Forum and companies like that really helped propel our market there. We grew it to a $250,000 market a month, or just under $3 million a year that final year, and that led to a promotion into a district sales manager role. Now that DM role is a little different. It's working over multiple branches. I took over 8 branches in 2012, and then ultimately by the end of that time frame, it was up to 22 branches. But that role is very much, kind of like the CEO of a company. We run all the finances, sales strategy, hiring, just you run everything, because the company's really decentralized. So that was really probably my favorite job with the organization, because I felt like an entrepreneur, especially as I got tenure in that role. I started to feel like I was owning the business and making decisions that mattered, and having the gratification of bringing in great people, and over years seeing them grow into leaders for our group. So after doing that for 10 years, and I thought I'd do that forever, I actually got asked to move into this national account sales role. They said, we're looking for a loudmouth that can talk about our value proposition, and I fit the bill. So I moved into that role in roughly July of 2022. So before I go on and just give one more homage, if you will, to what I do today, I do want to maybe give a little, just between those major jumps, kind of what I feel like may have led to some success for those of you that are looking for a little advice, or just to give a little more color to the story. I think especially in the first couple of roles I was at in the company, I had some really good advice to really work on performing where I'm at. I think that my district manager at the time knew I was really ambitious, and he said, prove that you can do that next job by proving you can do the job you're in now. In other words, grow where you're planted. And I think that was really good advice for me, because otherwise I probably would have just been looking all over the job board after 6 months. And now, after I've been with the company for nearly 20 years, I have the perspective of understanding what that would have looked like. Would have looked like maybe a lack of loyalty to the role, maybe a lack of confidence that I could do the role that I was in, and I needed to run to something else. So I think that was a really good thing for me to understand. Now, as I moved into the district manager role and in the role I'm in today, I think those 2 promotions happened because I got good at something that's very valued in the business world. I got really good at working myself out of a job. What I mean by that is, both as a general manager and a district manager, I realized, A, I don't like to work that hard. And B, it's really a lot easier to achieve our goals if 2 or 3 or 4 of us are trying to help tackle and accomplish them. And that sounds, once again, like a real simple thing, but I think so many times, middle management especially, they go by that old adage, if you're going to get something done right, you got to do it yourself. And I think that's a really big misstep as far as reaching long-term goals. Because at the end of the day, if you're not careful with that kind of mentality, you will truly be the bottleneck to the success that you're ambitious about. So this is the team that I manage today. I have a group of 15 folks here in Dallas-Fort Worth that the right side of them manage contracts. I got a couple of people that sign new contracts. We're a tight-knit group. All of us, except for one, sit in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. One of them's in Austin, just because I'm trying to stake claim to that market from a contract standpoint. But this is what our team is really busy, and this is what they look like. As far as the geography we're over, let me see if I got something that points on here. Look at that. You can see this lime green area in North Texas. That's the geography that we are trying to support contracts. And that's kind of a complicated thing to explain, because people think, well, that's your territory, that you're responsible for Fastenal. And that's in no way accurate. That's the area where we own headquartered customers. To give you some examples there's a few of them I'm allowed to share their names, because we have signed NDAs, and we're allowed to say that we're partners. So think of Modular Power Solutions. Y'all may have heard about them. They're a data center infrastructure manufacturer. Safran Aerospace. Some of y'all may have flown on a Southwest airline recently. Trinity Rail is a very large tank car manufacturer in the Fort Worth market. All of those are great examples of industrial clients that are based out of Dallas-Fort Worth, and they do business with us all over the place. And what this group of 15 folks on the board does for Fastenal is make sure that there's an active contract that's financially beneficial for our company, and maybe financially incentivizes our customer to try to make sure that, we continue to grow the agreement. And of course, we drive governance and price files and things of that nature. But that's a little bit about what I do today. And once again, I kind of lead and once again, try to make sure that we have great people trained up and developing to where maybe one of these days I'll be able to work myself out of a job yet again. Because once again, I think that's a really, really good rule of thumb. It's developing and investing those around you so they can do everything you can do just better. So this might be my first folly with AI in this presentation. So I asked it if it would recreate the start with why slide that I've used in the past that, based off of Simon Sinek's book. Y'all may have heard of Simon Sinek, great speaker and author. And he's got a book, Start With Why, and I'm going to talk about why that's relevant here in a second. But I said, please create an industrial look of this slide for me. And I don't know what y'all think, but has anybody seen Stranger Things? Yeah, it looks like the Upside Down, doesn't it? So I swear the industrial world is not dark and gloomy like the Upside Down in Stranger Things, I promise. For those of you that haven't seen the show, maybe you'll get that joke later when you watch it. But here's what I want to talk about, which is Fastenal's Why. The book from Simon Sinek really says companies' identity and their purpose should inspire their customers to buy their product or inspire them to participate and want to be a consumer. And so many companies, I think, out there in the world, they don't get that. They don't play by that rule, and they try to manipulate customers. They try to put a buy one, get one free out there, or there's a seasonal promotion price where you get the first 90 days free. And at the end of the day, those manipulations are effective. That's why people use them. But long term, they don't generally create loyalty. The next company that comes along and gives a better promotional price or that promotion expires, all of a sudden, the business is at risk. And Fastenal is a planned spend supplier. Like we're selling stuff, like selling programs in that are perpetual in nature. They have this perpetual service tail to them. And what we are trying to do for our customers is ultimately sell a value of productivity into their facilities. And I'm going to spend a few slides here explaining what I mean by that. But just to really hammer home the inspiration versus manipulation, I would like for everybody that has an iPhone to pick it up and show it to me. That's probably 80% of the room, if not 90. Okay, great. That means I can go on with the rest of this now. All right, so those of you that held your iPhone up, if I made you a deal and said, I will save you 10% off your monthly bill and give you a brand new Android device, who would take me up on it? Couple? We got one, two, maybe three. Why did the other 70 of you not raise your hand? They want 20% off. Good haggling technique.
That contract, I put the price up eventually.
Could be other commercial implications, sure.
Because I'm just comfortable with Apple.
Something beyond the price of the product is influencing your reason to want to use that product. That's interesting. That's interesting. Maybe, oh yes, we have another. Brand loyalty. That's exactly what I'm going for. A plus to the lady that said brand loyalty. I'm not giving out any prizes, but if I would, you would get one. So think about that. Hey, maybe you're not into iPhones. Maybe you still have your flip phone from the 80s or whatnot. Think of other examples. Maybe it's a Harley Davidson. Good luck getting a Harley Davidson owner to step onto an Indian or a Yamaha. There's brand loyalty there. Something about that brand, something about the purpose or the meaning behind that company resonates with the consumer that's really far beyond or transcends any type of commercial manipulation. Is something cheaper, or can you get a good deal? And that's what I'm trying to explain to y'all today about what we are doing every day in the market, which is trying to help our customers understand why Fastenal, which is that we really want to challenge our customers' understanding and interpretation of cost, that it really extends beyond the cost of the product on the invoice, that the cost of the process, and many times, is exponentially larger. And we believe that helping you eliminate those costs and reinvest in productivity is the best way to help our niche customer base, which is primarily manufacturing. The bigger and the more industrial, the better. That's where we live. So what does that look like? How do we serve that why? What are the things we do? Well, it's a total cost of ownership approach. Y'all may have heard of that term. Those of you folks that are business savvy, we're trying to help the customer understand the full cost of their supply chain beyond just that tip of the iceberg that they see. And I think a good example to walk through is like a pair of gloves, hand protection. It may be a $2 pair of gloves. By the time you take into the cost impact of all of the steps to get them into a facility, they might be a $5 pair of gloves. And ultimately, in a big facility, there may be a lot of wasted travel, getting the items people need, and then very cumbersome order processes, check with me processes, if you will, that somebody's got to get paid to execute. At the end of the day, we want to try to open our customers' eyes to their total cost of ownership and help them understand that typically the product is only a small piece of that. And our programs and branches can help eliminate all of that indirect cost, oftentimes bringing 20, 30% or more in total cost of ownership savings. Is anybody colorblind in here? A couple of you. I'm kind of green-brown, what my wife tells me. But I would argue that the color of the money they're buying the products with is the same darn color as the color of money that they're going to be paying their employees with. It's the same thing. It's all investment by the business. And at the end of the day, we think there's a lot of money that we can save our customers to helping them understand that total cost and bring in our solutions. So what do some of those solutions look like? So we're real fond of utilizing technology. We're probably in the industry known as really the technological leader. About 35% of Fastenal's business runs through one of these devices you see in this screen recording. But it brings a lot of things to the customer that may not be obvious. One, it puts a name to something. So it helps drive accountability in a facility where even though these machines have controls to lock down access and really manufacture cost reduction, many times just having the machine in place in general, where people put their name or their number in, it tells them, hey, I need to watch my behavior and be more conservative because I'm being watched. They call that the Hawthorne effect. The next thing is measuring cost by ID. A lot of the big customers we support, like think here in Denton, like Peterbilt is a customer that regionally we do a lot of business with. It's a large facility. And those kind of facilities, they may have different cost centers around there. Maybe some of them are working on buffing a finished product. Maybe other ones are working on assembly. There's different costs, different products, and it's really insightful for the customer to have some understanding of what is being used by who in what area. And maybe at that point, we can operate as a consultative supplier to bring data-driven change suggestions to our customer. And isn't that a much better thing than just dropping off more pallets of product at their dock or overstocking their already overconsumed items in their bins? The next thing I want to talk about that's really sewn into our way that we achieve that why is the proximity of our business. So going all the way back to our company's inception, our founder and longtime CEO, Bob Curlin, believed that the best way to identify and deliver value to your customers to be close to them. The more of a geographical barrier that's there is the more opportunity for you to be insulated and misunderstand what that value looks like. So when we first became publicly traded in 1987, we went from having like 51 branches, mostly in the Midwest, to having 2,500 of them by the time we got to 2008. And that process was all about proximity, trying to get our branches, our products, and our people close to our customers. And it was really successful. We were probably the darling of Wall Street, the most profitable company, by the way, that was selling hard goods during that time, growing like a weed. And it's all because we were getting close to the customer. And today we have a little different approach. The Internet of Things has, I think, brought a lot of revelations to the industry. But it hasn't disrupted our feeling of being close to the customer. In fact, I think it's actually amplified it. So many of our largest national competitors are realizing that the internet is a way to leverage operational expense. And you know what? They are absolutely right. The more you can reduce touches as a business, the more that you can farm out the process to the customer, the more you can get the inventory that's needed for their processes on their books instead of yours. Honestly, the more aggressive you can be with your margins and the the more you can invest in maybe giving net terms to customers that extend further because you're moving your product faster. There's mechanically nothing wrong with that approach. There's really good companies that rhyme with Slamazon that have had a similar approach to the market that's been very successful. But once again, I think it amplifies what makes Fastenal special. And we have an online order portal that complements what we do. But make no mistake about it, Fastenal is not trying to be the best drop ship supplier in the market where we drop off a box at your back dock. Because once again, our belief is the best way to add value is to walk through that door. And whatever happens in that journey of that box, whether it's products that are ending up on a production line or safety and PPE that are ending up on your employees' hands and heads, we believe that getting those products as close to where they need to be consumed is the best way to keep those workers that need that PPE doing stuff that actually creates value add for your customer. All of our customers, they're businesses. They have customers too. And they're responsible for generating a value proposition, and managing a tool crib doesn't add any value to that. Hiring extra procurement people and receivers to receive in the stuff that you got from a dropship supplier in no way enables you to mark up your products more. But I would argue if you need to hire people and you can take those 2 receivers and put them on the production line and allow a technology that Fastenal provides to interrupt the cost of those people, the savings should be easily into the 6 figures. And at the end of the day, our on-site program is really our latest iteration of that. We're moving in to our customers' facilities. Like I said, we have to continue to evolve what we're doing. Opening up more brick and mortar stores is not necessarily the answer. But yet we're still finding a way to get closer by now moving into the customer's facility, maybe taking over that tool crib. And in the same way that our competitors are racing and pressing at their OpEx with drop ship supply models, we're attacking our OpEx by reducing our rent. Because typically our customers don't charge us rent to operate in their facility. About 12% of our operating expense in a local region, like if you've ever seen a Fastenal store, 12% of the operating expense on average is all wrapped up in occupancy. Paying for the dumpster, paying for the electricity, the phone bill, the rent, all these things that come along with having space rented there or purchased there. In the scenario where we migrate our business operations on site, we erase all of that 12%. So we enable ourselves to have a facelift on our operational expense. We're now inside the customer's facility, usually 40 hours a week, shooting fish in a barrel, picking up new business. And we're probably bringing higher customer service levels to boot. So it's kind of a winning juxtaposition if the customer is frustrated by the dropship supplier that keeps shipping them the wrong part because they don't understand their business. So maybe a little bit of a different approach, but we're growing faster than they are. So we're doing something right. All right, last area I want to go over, just talking about how we serve our why, kind of that general value proposition is really attacking cash flow. So I'm sure we've probably all been in a Sam's Club, or maybe there's some Costco snobs in here. I don't know. But you guys probably notice that's kind of more bang for your buck, big containers of things, buy in bulk, get a cheaper unit price, right? We all know what that game is. Anybody that shops at Sam's Club or Costco, not hating on you, but you probably have like 3 pantries at the house. So you got to keep a jar of ketchup this big. Well, that thought process is also dangerous in the industrial world, or dangerous for B2B. Because yeah, you can save a lot of money buying in bulk. Distributors, even Fastenal, will say, hey, I can make 1 delivery every 6 months and just send a truckload out there. Less operating costs for me. Sure, I'll give you a 5% price down. Easy peasy. However, when you do that, and especially as an organization, you subscribe to that as a primary buying behavior, you start to create these tertiary cost deposits in the business where cash is stuck on a shelf becoming stale. Heck, it might even really start impacting expenses. You might have to hire more people to count your inventory. Seriously, you might have to deal with a higher scrap rate because some of that bulk product expired. You might have to buy more pallet racking or the right size lift to get those pallets where they go. Or God forbid, you might even have to rent more space to keep all that stuff. But you know what? You saved 5%. Congratulations. You probably just destroyed the profitability of your business. Alternative to that, Fastenal is trying to bring a just-in-time inventory schematic where we don't push inventory to our customers. We allow the production trends and the needs of the business to pull in the demand of the products we sell. And we utilize, like I said before, technology to really bring a cutting edge to that and have a good understanding of exactly through data what we need to do next. Somebody always asks how we're using AI, so this is probably one of the ways that I can go ahead and get ahead of that question. All this data that we're grabbing through our just-in-time inventory programs, those vending machines, we have so much information about exactly what a customer is using, in many cases exactly where they're using the facility, and who is using that item. I know that you guys have probably started playing with some AI tools. I'm trying to show you that I'm not an old fogey and I can play with them too. But y'all may have started to realize, what do you need for AI to work? If you're going to have a cool AI tool to do something, what do you need? You need data. You need data. So I would argue that having a great AI technology as a business, but not being able to feed it any valid data, is kind of like having a Corvette and not knowing how to drive a stick shift. It's just going to sit in the driveway because you don't have anything to feed it. You don't know how to drive that technology to bring benefit to the business. Whereas businesses that have partnered with Fastenal, especially those who have been partnered with us for a while, we got like a decade of data. It's just sitting there ready to be harvested and plugged into advancing AI tools to help drive forecasting, to help understand obsolescence trends, to try to make the customer positioned where they can make the right decisions for the business, as opposed to being forced to go to a website to order something. All right, very similar concept here, but for anybody that fell asleep through the last few slides, here's kind of like a summary of what I'm talking about. So first slide, this is a real easy way to go to a customer and say, I'm going to save you 5%. Let me quote that and I'll sell it to you cheaper. By the way, if anybody in here wants to get into sales, I'll tell you that's a really bad idea to approach your market like that, because ultimately you just condition your customer that you're always going to be cheaper, and you're probably limiting your ability to make money in the future. Like bye-bye future bonuses and raises, because your approach is cutting into that budget. But hey, lazy salesperson appeals to customers and they say, hey, I'll just sell it to you cheaper. That's one way to save the customer money. I think there's more of a two-dimensional approach that I would encourage our salespeople and maybe our customers to take into account. And that is, maybe there's a better product that costs about the same but lasts longer given the application. Or maybe one of those pretty blue vending machines you saw a minute ago, we can set restrictions in there and manufacture that the people on the line are using 3 less pairs of gloves a week. If we can drive 15% usage, even selling the product at the same price, I think that nobody in this room, even if you're math wizards, are going to argue with me that we're going to make that gray line go up a little bit. We're going to increase the profit yield for the customer in those two, when you measure that second instance over the first. Everybody with me? Good. It's not that complicated. Here's what Fastenal is trying to do, though. We're trying to drive the blue line. When you think about manufacturers, that the best thing they can do is make more truck bodies, drive throughput of more welding consumables out the back door, make more trailers that day out of the static fixed labor investment they have. At the end of the day, the best way we're going to help our customers move that gray line is helping them be more productive with their investments. So when I say we want to challenge our customers on what cost means, and we want to help out driving productivity because that's what we get out of bed in the morning believing, then those last 8 slides should sum it up for you guys pretty good. And in case it didn't, here's a slide I forgot to put in there. It says we do less or do more with less. So, all right. So I want to now swing over to talking a little bit about the performance of our organization. I think there's a really, really neat story to be told there. Those of you that maybe have an affinity for financials and financial performances of organizations, we're a pretty neat study as far as the fact that we sell hard goods but generate profit like a tech company. So what you see here is just a pretty impressive arc that shows that if you invested like $1,000 in 1987, you'd be a owner of $14 million worth of stock value today. The company, between 1987, when we became publicly traded, until 2010, was the highest performing stock that was not a tech company. And once again, all we were doing is selling nuts and bolts and safety supplies, like a regional supplier. That growth through customer service, though, drove a lot higher profit rendering. Customers will pay, like you guys prove with your iPhone, a little bit more if there's something beyond just the price of the product that's driving the decision. So now let's flip over to a little screen recording. So I went to full ratio to give you guys a little more context for the industry. So I kind of scrolled on down here just to show you guys what the industrial distribution world looks like. And just to maybe explain these columns to you here, this first column, that shows the gross margin, the markup of the product that industry is selling their products as. They buy it for $1, sell it for $1.40 or whatnot. The second category is the profit yield. So after they pay their bills, what do they usually make? What's the take home? What's the pre-tax profit? So in that scenario, what we're saying is that for every dollar worth of sales in the industrial distribution world, usually their gross margin 30%, 25 cents of that dollar goes to paying operational expense, and they got about 5 cents left. I think that's the kind of yield you get when you are commoditized and you bring nothing but a cheaper gimmick and a commercial advantage to a customer, but you don't really bring any real advantage to them that impacts their business in a positive way. Compare that to Fastenal, and I just refreshed and pulled into this slideshow our 2025 numbers. So you may notice that we're about 15% or 1,500 basis points higher in gross margins, which you're like, that's crazy. Why are you guys so much higher, almost twice on the markup? Two things, well, maybe three things. One, the rest of the industrial world may not necessarily sell as many threaded fasteners and processed steel items as we do, which there's a higher margin yield there. But I would also say we are likely, from just the piece price of the product, it varies by commodity, but I would say 5 to 10% higher. We are selling the products at a premium. There's no hiding that. We're a publicly traded company. Our customers can see this information. But when we do a good job helping them understand that iceberg I was showing you earlier, and we come back and show them the studies of what they would have spent if they wouldn't have reallocated that tool crib person, and if they wouldn't have figured out that overusage of that abrasive wheel, and we say, hey, we actually saved you $175,000. That's how we effectively articulate the value proposition of, Mr. Customer, let me talk to you about the fact that I am 5% higher, but I'm going to save you 30%. And that's challenging value proposition, but a message back to the potential salespeople in the room. That is a much better way, I believe, to create a lucrative environment that brings more value to the customer and potentially creates a more healthy environment for supporting great salespeople and great agents to deliver those products in the industrial world. If there's one thing that I don't necessarily think that technology has gotten to the point, it can't completely eliminate the need for good people. We need good people, especially with our model. So at the end of the day, if we're going to be a bargain basement seller, we're kind of marrying ourselves to be able to afford bargain basement talent. And that's not a pathway that's going to lead to success for our organization. So last thing too, just here on this slide, the bottom line here just shows the overall profit. If you remember, the industry average was just shy of 5%, whereas we're generating about 21 cents or right over 20 cents per dollar of sales. So about 4 times the profit of the rest of the industry. So we're a large company. We're a publicly traded company. We obviously want to deliver value to our shareholders, but those of you that really have your sights set on having great careers in any industry, it's kind of nice to be part of a company that generates a high profit, especially once you get into vested roles. And we can talk about that later if y'all don't know what I mean. All right, I want to tie a bow on this by answering another question that was in feedback from the fall session, and that is, we would like to know more about where Fastenal is going. We know where you said you've been. You very obnoxiously talked about how you do it, but we want to know where you're going. So I put this slide together for you, or my Copilot tool did. So there's kind of 4 categories of Fastenal customers out there. Now, this may be a little bit of an oversimplification, but I think it'll help tell the story. So, and I'm getting to that vision part of where we're going. So there's customers that just like order from us online. It's very transactional. We have so many local branches that we're a pretty easy person to just stop in and pick something up from, or order something online and have it shipped to you, or get it at the local store. We probably have like 12,000 of those customers just in the US alone. So a lot of customers, but those customers that strictly purchase from us that way, they're less than 5% of our business. So they're very much, afterthought's not the right word, but they're not part of our core. They're just buying from us on happenstance. However, some of those customers that start transacting with us in that way, they realize and they start understanding the value proposition. And maybe they work or they run a procurement department or a supply chain. They have a supply chain job that's at a manufacturing facility down the street. And they're like, I've heard of these Fastenal vending machines. And that's how we get people into category 2, where we bring in some type of Fastenal managed inventory solution and start really bringing the value of what we do, which is stepping through the back door to interrupt their cost obligation to the supply chain. We have about 8,000 customers that have some form of vendor managed inventory with technology embedded. And once again, that's just a US-based number, but 85% of our business is in the US, so it's a good sample size of our core company. Many of those customers, and once again, it's a journey. Many of those customers, they either grow into having a big demand, or we start selling into different categories where there's a pretty impressive amount of value. And we start moving and migrating our local team out of the local branch and on to their facility to just basically start operating on their floor. Maybe taking over their tool cage or running a consigned inventory location where legitimately our store is moving into their facility. That third area, we've been working on that initiative for about 9 years now. And that is, we have 2,400 embedded on-site facilities in the US. It is representative of about 60% of our revenue now. So we have very quickly become more of an on-site type of integrated supplier, especially over the last 10 years. Now, where we're going, I think this is kind of interesting. So let me kind of walk through this for you guys. So this next area of integrated partner, we've started doing that organically in many of our on-site locations where they're like, hey, we buy all this other stuff from you because Fastenal sells so many things. Can you possibly get some of these raw materials for us? Can you possibly sell us this weird proprietary electrical contraption that we buy from the electrical supply house? And of course, we're a growth through customer service minded company. So we're like, yeah, I'll try. And sometimes the customer can stomach the markup of us not having great cost leverage because it's not a core item to us. But they're like, hey, just let Fastenal handle it. We don't want to run down to the store and get it ourselves. So it kind of organically has started. We've been kind of tiptoeing into that integrated type of world. But many times there are big opportunities, especially in electrical and power transmission, where those aren't our strongest categories. Selling pillow block bearings and Allen Bradley parts, that's just not really our game. We're very much more into off-the-shelf components and safety and other items. But I think our company feels like some of these biggest customers that are on sites today, the average on-site customer is about a $2 million annual site. So big locations that generate a lot of revenue. Most of those locations can do about $6 to $7 million. Some of them even a lot more. But we got to figure out, how do we sell into the electrical space and the power transmission space? Because that's like 90% of it. There are proprietary channels in place, especially in those two categories, where the manufacturers have figured out that we're going to make only stocking distributors supply partners for us. So many of those Allen Bradley's, not a bad company, but they kind of rub me wrong a little bit. They won't let us sell their products. We can't even buy it because we're not a stocking distributor. But it's kind of a bad cash flow move for us as an organization to say, all right, we're just going to buy all of this electrical inventory and put it on distribution centers and all this power transmission stuff, hoping that we can then turn around and sell it. We will take a bath from a cash flow standpoint for like 2 years trying to create an ROI. And I don't know if y'all caught this earlier, but we are a publicly traded company. So we kind of play by this 90-day shot clock. So we're not going to be able to create that ROI in 90 days. So instead of going out and just making that huge capital expense and bring in all of this inventory and tie up all this cash, I guess we could go public or go private a couple of years and try that like Dell did. But we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is we're going to go to our customer with a 2-phase approach. We're going to go to them and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, those electrical items that you're buying and those pillow block bearings that it seems like you use a lot of, keep buying them where you're buying them today. Please. You know, I've quoted them before. I can't get them cost effectively. Please don't. Let's not worry about me trying to distribute those products. But you just buy them from the electrical house or the bearing house that you're used to. However, these on-site locations allow our on-site tool crib manager to start managing the procurement process of those parts. We've got a crib management tool. It's a very, very reasonably fee-based program. And on top of handling all the core items we handle for you today, we will clerk those purchases, make sure you never run out of inventory. We'll push those POs to the supplier that you want us to buy it from, and we'll move on down the road. You'll get a holistic view of what Fastenal can really do for you because we now can provide reporting on that as well. And after a year or two of doing that, we'll now know exactly what to buy in the electrical category and in the power transmission category. So it's a little bit of a two-phased approach that's more of like a 2028, 2029 strategy of where the company's going. But any of y'all that talk or work with a Fastenal know that, or maybe just kind of see some evidence of what we're doing, that's the strategy. We want to continue to lean into how can we bring supply chain control programs to you that save you bukus in total cost of ownership and continue to grow into our best partnerships to complement that, even in areas that aren't core to our business today. And I feel really good about our strategy leaning on our best customers and our best customer relationships to essentially create a pathway to grow into two more very critical and lucrative industrial supply categories. Yes.
Job because of orders with that, where they have the inventory on site with the customer. How do you keep them so successful? Like, how do you keep their business coming in?
I don't know that I understand the question. How do we keep the business? Can you?
Prep orders. Prep orders. You said you have those script contracts with the on-site customer. How do you keep them so successful?
I think that proximity piece I explained earlier is the biggest piece of that puzzle. So it's very expensive the last mile is the most expensive mile of servicing a customer. The thing is that we already have a vast network that's there and it's profitable. So the fact that we're 3 miles down the road allows us to very easily monitor, touch, provide corrective action, identify when there's issues or note obsolescence. And I think the biggest difference between us and our national competitors is that they don't have that line of sight to the business. It slows their reaction time. It slows their ability to understand trends in the business and ultimately leads to customer service defaults, which that's ultimately opportunity for us. But I think that's probably the biggest elixir that allows us to come in and be successful with those kind of programs is the local presence. Because if you think about it, if we're putting a person inside of a customer facility to run it, what happens if that person's sick? They can't just not open the tool crib that day. Our competitors don't necessarily have an answer to that question. We have a store that's like 2 miles down the street. We'll just send one of our interns over and they'll run the tool crib that day. It'll be fine. That local presence really allows us the ability to really drive and grow through customer service, which once again is our motto as an organization. I want to begin to wrap up today with something that's a big departure from anything else that we've talked about. But I was kind of giving it some thought over the last day or two on exactly what I felt like I would want to hear if I was sitting in your shoes today. So that's what I'm going to finish up with by telling a story. Not good on time, Brian? 5 more minutes? Okay, good. The story will take about 5 minutes. Who all, raise of hands, wants a sense of gratification in your lives and in your career? You want to feel like you're doing something that means something? You want to feel like you're achieving goals? You want to feel fulfilled? I would argue that most everybody sitting here probably falls somewhere to saying yes to the answer to that question. I want to tell you about 2 times in my life where, in my professional career, where I felt deep dissatisfaction. The first one was, I mentioned I ran a Fastenal branch from 2008 to 2012. The last year, actually it was the second to last year, 2011, we won what was a coveted company award. We were the best branch in the company. We hit all the metrics, hit our sales goals, performed profitably, made sure that everything was done. We even won this little contest about the store looking good. And it was my goal. It was so what I cherished. I wanted to end up at our employee show in Florida and get recognized winning that award. I chased it from the time that I became a manager, and then that 3rd year it was realized. And I walked up to this banquet room where we were having dinner, where they handed out that award. I got my trophy, and the deepest feeling of emptiness came over me. Because that was it. People didn't hoist me off on their shoulders and start toasting champagne and throw streamers all over the place. It was on to the next thing. And it took me a while to process that feeling of, why do I feel this way? I just made this big achievement. Why am I almost borderline depressed about it? And it's because it was over. And the gratification of winning that award really wasn't anything that had staying power past that moment. Second identifiable time in my career where I had a very similar feeling was, I remember it very vividly. It was 2022. And anybody that was around the industrial world, stuff got weird 2020 to 2022. Like we put the economy, especially some of our manufacturers, in like this artificial coma for a handful of months. And then people didn't really know what to do except they were buying truckloads of hand sanitizer. But in 2022, a lot of our market kind of woke up and we saw a resurgence of overproduction to catch up on a lot of the underproduction and a lot of the changes in the manufacturing world that took place in that time. And I had a really big goal in my career. Always in the back of my mind, I wanted to make a certain amount of money. Now, that sounds probably very materialistic, but it was important to me. It was something I always coveted. And in 2022, it was such a white hot economy. Our business was growing at like 50% that year in certain months. Like we were killing it as a mature business, a $50 million business unit of a collection of 22 stores. And we were almost doubling over the previous year. And that year, I achieved that goal and I made the most money I'd ever made and I hit that number. And the same darn feeling came in. Just kind of an empty feeling. I guess I can buy a bigger boat. The reason I'm bringing all this up with this principle of the 5 levels of leadership behind me is it took me 2 of those distinct feelings to learn this lesson. But I realized coming out of that second depressive state, it's okay to have goals that are materialistic, monetary, maybe organizational achievement. But I think the goals that bring the most gratification for me today, I just never really realized it, was becoming the kind of person that I wanted to become. And I actually read a book called The 5 Levels of Leadership. I didn't read it on purpose. I had a kid I was mentoring in 2023, and I tripped across another John Maxwell book where it talks about the 5 levels. And so one of our mentorship sessions, I said, hey, go read this, go read up on this concept of 5 levels. We'll talk about it next time. Well, I was on an airplane. He texted me and he said, so where's the PDF that comes with the book? What book? I wanted you to look up a concept on the internet. Well, the poor guy went and read this book, which is, if you guys have ever seen the book, like it's a 7-hour audio. It's like a 400-page book. So this poor kid, he read this whole book in like 2 weeks as we were going to meet because he thought that's what I asked him to do. So of course, I tried to read the book too, maybe did a little research outside of just reading the book. But the book is amazing, but it helped me really realize that concept, kind of rereading through that material, that really leadership is about influence. I think John Maxwell would say it's nothing more, it's nothing less. And I think that the pathway that I've tried to get focused on now is trying to work to become that level 4 or maybe one day level 5 leader. And it's a real linear process that I think translates into a lot of things in life. I think it translates outside of work. But the concept goes a little something like this. I'll give you a 60-second rundown. So level 1 is just the influence that you're given based on your position. So if you're a manager at a Chick-fil-A, the people that you work over, you will only have influence over them as far as your title dictates. They will not come in for you on Saturday when they don't have to. But level 2 is an advancement into the relationship level, the permission level. People start to follow you because they want to, because they know that you care about them. That old adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's true, because John Maxwell argues this is a linear process. You can be an expert in your field at level 3, bringing home the big bucks for the company you work for. But if people don't think that you care about them, if you haven't established rapport, it may dilute or altogether eradicate any influence that you have based on your expertise. And level 4 means you're pouring in to recreate and replicate and develop others around you. That's that working yourself out of a job thing I was talking about. And then ultimately level 5 is where your influence transcends your industry, or maybe even your geography, and people start to follow you because of who you are. And I think that the book says like only like 1% of people ever reach level 5. So probably an ambitious thing for a guy like me to try to aspire to. But I will tell you, beyond making any amount of money, beyond any type of internal trophy, the best moments I have is when I talk to one of y'all in 5 years and you say, hey, there's one thing that you said, the rest of it was garbage, but there's one thing that you said that really stuck with me and made an impact. And that is what's really gratifying, and what I would encourage you guys to consider if you're setting goals for yourself, because it might generate a better outcome for you. So I didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but I really did plan on ending with one super quick story. It'll take like 60 seconds. So I want to wrap a bow on this Fastenal value proposition with you guys. So I want to do it by, if you guys all heard what I said, we actually try to bring sustainable value that impacts the customer supply chain instead of just selling them a cheap part and let them just spend a bunch of money in their supply chain or productivity. So has anybody ever heard the story of the turkey and the bull? Anybody? Good. Here's how the story goes. Turkey and a bull are standing in a field. The turkey really wants to get to the top of that tree because that tree has fresh leaves on it and they're the best. So the turkey says, how am I ever going to get up there? It's so high. I'm such a little bird. And the bull says, hey, eat some of my droppings. They'll give you strength and you'll be able to make it up there. Turkey tries it. And what do you know? Second day that he tried it, he was able to make it up to the first limb. And he's like, man, this really worked. And the next day he came up and ate a whole bunch and he made it halfway up the tree. Day 4, he made it a little bit higher. And day 5, he ate some more, made it all the way to the top of the tree. He was promptly shot by a hunter. The moral of the story is bullshit might get you to the top, but it will not keep you there. So I'm hoping our customers will understand that we're not gimmicky. We're not trying to have a temporary solution or something that is a promotional. We're trying to bring value that's sustainable. So thank you for all your attention today. I'll be hanging around in case y'all have any questions.